He walked into the nursery and saw his black maid nursing his son. What he did next, no one, not even she, could have predicted. This story will challenge everything you think you know about love, sacrifice, and second chances. Stay till the end. The twist will leave you speechless. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss our inspiring, life-changing content. Remember to like, share, and support this channel, because here, every story is more than just entertainment. Each one carries a meaningful moral lesson designed to inspire, uplift, and transform. A millionaire catches his black maid nursing his son. What he does next shocks everyone. My name is Ethan Cole, founder and CEO of Cole Tech Industries. A man whose name graced Forbes lists, whose face appeared on magazine covers. People called me a genius, a visionary. But the truth? I was a broken man in a designer suit. Success had not come easy. It had clawed at my soul, demanded everything. My sleep, my peace, my family, and eventually, my marriage. When my wife, Amanda, walked out, she left with her heels clicking on the marble floor. No tears. Just silence. She said the one thing that shook me more than any market crash. You are present in boardrooms, but absent in life. She left behind only one thing. Our son, Noah. Barely 8 months old. A wide-eyed, curious child, who did not yet know that his father's embrace was colder than his crib. I hired help. Elite nannies came and went. They followed routines, schedules, manuals. But Noah cried. All the time. A hollow, aching sound that echoed through the mansion like guilt I could not shake. Then came her. Her name was Grace. Mid-30s. Brown skin like warm mahogany. Eyes that had seen more pain than she would ever speak of. She wore plain clothes, spoke with care, and walked like she was carrying invisible burdens. She was not from an agency. She was a referral from the gardener's wife. And at first, I almost said no. But something in her voice made me pause. I do not raise children for money, she said. I raise them because they need love. I hired her for a trial week. No expectations. But on the third day, I came home early. The house was quiet, too quiet. No Noah's cry. No echo of my emptiness. I walked into the nursery. And there she was. Grace. Sitting in the rocking chair. Cradling my son in her arms. Humming a soft lullaby that wrapped around the room like warmth. But what made my breath catch? She was nursing him. Her breast to his mouth. My son. Feeding. Peaceful. Eyes closed. I froze. My world, which I had built on logic, on control, tilted. What are you doing? I whispered, harsher than I intended. She looked up calm but firm. He was starving, she said. The formula was upsetting his stomach. I tried everything. I did not plan this, Mr. Cole, but I could not let him suffer. I stood there, confused. Angry, ashamed, and then, my son looked at me, milk still on his lips, and he smiled. Not the half-formed, reflexive grin I had seen before, but a real, soft, soulful smile. Something cracked inside me. I sat down, right there, on the floor. The marble felt cold, but for the first time in months, my chest burned. He has not smiled at me like that, I admitted. My voice broke. Grace said nothing. She did not scold me. She did not lecture. She just held him. And in that moment, I felt like she was holding me too. From that day, things changed. I began to come home early. Not for emails, but for lullabies. For bedtime stories. Grace became more than help. She became presence. A silent force of healing. She never overstepped. But she never stepped back either. Once, I found her sitting alone in the garden. Tears on her cheeks. She tried to hide them, but I sat beside her. I lost a child, she said quietly. 2 years ago. A little boy. I could not save him. I think, maybe that is why I am here now. That night, I cried too. Not just for her pain, but for the father I never was. And for the man I still had a chance to become. The media had no idea. No headlines captured the story that unfolded within my own home. Not the story of IPOs or mergers, but of a broken billionaire. And a woman with quiet strength, who reminded him what love looks like. Soft, simple, selfless. I began to heal. Not through therapy, not through business wins, but through kindness, routine, and the gentle hands of a woman the world would never consider powerful. Yet she was the strongest person I had ever met. Then came the day I returned home late again, after weeks of being present. A meeting ran over. Traffic choked the roads. When I entered the house, it was too quiet. I walked into the nursery. Noah was asleep. But Grace was not there. Only a note on the rocking chair. My hands trembled as I opened it. Mr. Cole. It was never meant to be permanent. I came when your son needed me. And now I think, it is time he needs you. Not me. I ran through the house. She was gone. But on the dining table, a package. Inside, a photo of her son. A necklace. And a journal. With one line underlined in red ink. Healing does not always come from medicine. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing an apron, and carries the scent of hope. I held that journal like it was a lifeline. My throat tightened. My eyes stung. I was a man who had conquered markets. But I stood there, defeated by silence. Grace had vanished. No farewell. No request. No return address. Just a message written in a trembling hand. And a child upstairs sleeping peacefully because of her. The days that followed felt hollow. The house, though filled with light, felt dim. Even Noah searched for her. He would crawl to the nursery door, pat it gently, murmur sounds that used to bring her running. But no footsteps came. And in those moments, I realized something far deeper. Grace had not just fed my child. She had fed my soul. She had taught me what real presence meant. Not just showing up, but seeing, feeling, connecting. I began reading her journal. 1 page each night. Every entry was a window into a world of loss, resilience, and compassion. She had lost her son to pneumonia. A preventable death. But poverty did not grant second chances. She had worked 3 jobs. Nursed other people's children while grieving her own. She wrote about how Noah reminded her of him. Not in features, but in spirit. He fights sleep like Malik used to, she wrote. He curls his fist when angry, just like my boy. Her grief had not hardened her. It had made her gentler, wiser. One evening, I sat Noah on my lap, opened the final page of the journal, and whispered the words aloud. If I leave without goodbye, it is not because I do not care. It is because I care too much. And I fear that if I stay longer, I may not be able to leave at all. I am a visitor in your story, not its author. Write the rest, Mr. Cole. Write it well. That night, I wept. Not out of regret, but out of gratitude. And something shifted inside me. I called the office the next morning. Told them I would not be in. I packed a small bag for Noah and myself. And I drove. Not to the city. Not to a conference. But to a place where I knew someone might remember her. The gardener's wife. She opened the door with surprise. I stood there, unsure of what I was even asking. I just want to know she is okay, I said. The woman smiled softly. She always was, Mr. Cole. But she wanted you to be. I asked if she knew where Grace had gone. She hesitated, then nodded. She went back home. To the south. Small town in Georgia. She helps out at a church shelter. Cares for children there. That night, I booked 2 flights. Noah's passport had just arrived the week before. I took it as a sign. We arrived in Georgia on a Sunday. The air was thick with humidity. But it felt good. Grounded. Real. I drove through red dirt roads, past creaking porches and kids playing with makeshift toys. Until I saw her. through the window of a small community hall, reading to a group of children. Her voice calm, her face peaceful. Noah saw her too, and before I could unbuckle his seat, he squealed. She turned. Her eyes widened. She stepped outside as we approached. Sunlight warmed her face. I did not speak. Not at first. I simply handed her the journal, opened to the final page, and showed her what I had written beneath her words. Then stay. Become the author too. Her hand trembled as she reached for mine, and in that quiet golden moment, surrounded by the sound of laughing children and the heartbeat of forgiveness, I knew. My wealth had bought empires, but her love had built a home. She stood there, still holding my hand. Her fingers were warm, but her eyes were full of a storm. Not anger, not even sorrow, but conflict. Grace had spent so long surviving, giving without asking, loving without expecting. She did not know how to receive. Noah looks strong, she said finally, her voice soft. I nodded. He misses you. Her gaze dropped. I miss him too. Every day. I knelt down beside Noah. He reached for her instantly, no hesitation, no confusion. Children know love when they feel it. They do not question the source. They just remember the warmth. She scooped him up, and he giggled. A sound that filled the quiet yard like music. Something in her shoulders eased. Something old released. I sat on the porch steps, watching them. And for the first time in months, I did not feel the weight of expectations. No boardrooms. No deals. Just this. A quiet, ordinary moment that felt more valuable than anything I had ever earned. When she finally looked back at me, I asked her the question I had been holding on to since the day she left. Why did you think you had to leave? She sat beside me, Noah still in her arms, now dozing off. Because I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid I had crossed a line. That I mattered too much. I turned to her. Grace, you did. You do. And that is not something to fear. She looked away. I come from a world where people like me are told to stay in their place. And what place is that? I asked gently. She looked me dead in the eye. Somewhere behind. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere forgotten. I shook my head. No. Not anymore. You saved my son. You saved me. And I am not asking you to come back to work. I took a breath. I am asking you to come home. Her lips parted, but no words came. Just tears. Silent, slow, sincere. She leaned her head on my shoulder. And for a long while, we said nothing. We did not need to. That night, I stayed in a small motel down the road. Noah slept curled against my chest. And I watched the stars through the cracked ceiling, thinking of Grace. Of how much she had endured. Of how much we both had to learn. About love. About second chances. About rewriting stories we once thought were finished. The next morning, I woke up to a knock. I opened the door half asleep, holding Noah. She stood there, wearing the same soft blue dress I had seen her in that first day at my home. Hair tied back. Eyes steady. I made pancakes, she said. Thought you might want some before you leave. I smiled. Only if you are joining us. She tilted her head. I was hoping you would ask. And just like that, something new began. It was not a proposal. Not a promise. Not yet. But it was real. It was enough. We spent the morning together. Laughing. Talking. Feeding Noah sticky bites of banana pancakes. Cleaning syrup from his nose. Watching him wobble as he took his first 2 steps across her kitchen floor. Grace caught him before he fell. And I realized. That is who she was. The quiet force that catches you. Right before you break. But still deep down. I knew the world would not understand. Not all of it. A millionaire. And a woman who once scrubbed his floors. Who once nursed his child out of pure human instinct. A black woman, gentle and powerful. A white man, born into privilege, finally learning what love really costs. People would talk, criticize, assume, judge. But I did not care. Because for the first time in my life, I was not building for headlines. I was building for heart. And just as I was about to speak again, her phone rang. She answered, her expression shifting instantly. Worried. Serious. What's wrong? I asked. She ended the call, eyes darting to the window. There's been a fire, she said. The shelter, where I work. Some of the children, they need help. She grabbed her keys. No hesitation. No fear. And in that moment, watching her move, with purpose, with urgency, with unshakable care, I knew. Her story was not over. And neither was ours. We drove in silence. Not the heavy kind, but the kind that hums with meaning, with urgency. Grace's eyes were fixed on the road. Her hands gripped the wheel tight, knuckles pale against the worn leather. I held Noah in the back seat, his tiny head resting against my chest, oblivious to the rising smoke curling into the sky ahead. As we turned the final bend, the shelter came into view, or what remained of it. The building stood, but the roof had partially collapsed. Blackened beams jutted into the sky like broken ribs. Children sat on the grass outside, wrapped in blankets. Some crying, some silent. One little girl stared blankly at the charred door, clutching a melted plastic toy. Grace leapt out before the car even stopped. She ran to them, fell to her knees, and wrapped two trembling boys into her arms. I stepped out slowly, holding Noah close, and watched her transform. This was not the quiet, composed woman who folded my son's laundry. This was a lioness, a protector, a mother in spirit, if not by blood, a woman who had known loss, and would do everything to keep these children from knowing it too. I walked over, offering help where I could. The staff recognized her immediately. She's the one who holds this place together, someone said to me. If we lose her, we lose the heart of it. I looked at the children. Their eyes, some hollow, some full of silent hope. I remembered my own hollow days. How easily wealth had masked emptiness. How close I came to forgetting what mattered. And I knew right then, this was not just Grace's fight. It was mine too. Later that evening, after we helped settle the children into a nearby church hall, I found Grace sitting alone on a bench under an old oak tree. She was quiet, her face smeared with soot, her hands still trembling. I sat beside her. No words at first. Just the soft chirping of crickets, the distant murmur of tired children finding rest. Finally, I spoke. I want to rebuild it. She looked at me, not with gratitude, not with awe, but with something far deeper. Trust. You do not have to fix everything, she whispered. I shook my head. I am not trying to fix it. I am trying to build something with you. She exhaled slowly, then leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. Why? She asked quietly. I looked out into the dusk, the stars just beginning to bloom in the purple sky. Because for the first time, I see the kind of man I want to become. And you showed him to me. She was silent for a moment. Then she whispered something I will never forget. Then let us build something that cannot burn. A week later, we broke ground. Not just on a new shelter, but on a new beginning. Architects came. Donors pledged. But this time, I did not just write checks. I carried bricks. I painted walls. I laughed with children. I sat with the lonely. And Grace, she bloomed. She stood tall in staff meetings. She organized food drives. She led bedtime prayers with the same voice that once calmed my son's midnight cries. Our bond deepened. Not rushed. Not dramatic. But steady. Like roots growing underground. Invisible to most. But unbreakable. Noah grew stronger too. He smiled more. He began calling her Mama Grace. And one morning, As we watched the children play in the yard of the nearly completed building, Grace turned to me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "what would have happened if I had never stepped into your house?" I nodded slowly. Every single day. And I meant it. Because I had built companies. I had lost love. I had chased success through sleepless nights and empty victories. But I never truly lived. Until I walked into that nursery and saw the woman who would change everything. Just as I was about to answer her again, a scream pierced the air. We turned. A boy had fallen from the jungle gym. He was clutching his leg, sobbing. Grace sprinted to him without thinking, kneeling, whispering softly, wiping his tears. And in that moment, I saw it. She was not just healing me. She was healing a world. I jogged over behind her, Noah bouncing gently in my arms. The boy was trembling, blood streaking down his shin. Grace had already calmed him with just her presence. Her voice low, warm, like a lullaby made of strength. "I've got you, sweetheart," she murmured, wrapping his tiny hand in hers. I knelt beside her, pulled out a cloth from my pocket, and without a word, pressed it gently to the wound. The boy looked up at us, eyes wide, glassy. "Am I gonna die?" he whispered. Grace smiled through her own tears. "Not today, little warrior." He grinned through his pain. And just like that, the fear faded. We carried him inside together. She cradled him with ease. And I watched her like it was the first time again. How did the world not see this woman? How had life overlooked her for so long? She was not just a helper, not just a healer. She was the very definition of grace itself. Later that night, the shelter hummed with soft lullabies and night lights. Children tucked under donated quilts. Full bellies. Safe dreams. Grace stood by the window in her modest room, looking out at the quiet town. I entered gently. Noah was already asleep in the next room. But I could not sleep. I walked up behind her, not saying anything at first, just letting the silence wrap around us like a shared memory. Then I asked the question I had kept buried under 1,000 unspoken moments. "Grace, what do you dream of?" She turned to me, eyes soft, a little surprised, like no one had asked her that in years. She took a breath, and for the first time, she let herself imagine. "I dream of a school," she said. "A place where no child is invisible. Where no girl is told her voice is too loud. Where no boy grows up believing he is only worth what he can survive." Her words lit something in me. Not just inspiration, but conviction. She kept going. "And I want a garden. A big one. With sunflowers and beans, and dirt that children are allowed to play in without being told to sit still. I want a place where they learn to grow things. And believe that they can grow too." I felt a lump rise in my throat. Because suddenly, the idea of million-dollar mergers and stock options felt small. "You should have all that," I said. She smiled. But it was the kind of smile that knows better. "I cannot afford it," she whispered. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a folded paper, placed it in her hand. She opened it slowly. Her eyes scanned the words. Her breath caught. It was a deed to an empty parcel of land, just outside town, the future site of Grace Academy. She covered her mouth with her hand. Tears streamed down her cheeks, silent and unfiltered. I stepped closer. "I do not want you to owe me anything," I said. "I just want you to be everything you are meant to be." She looked up at me then. Not as an employer, not as a billionaire, but as a man, finally learning what true wealth looks like. We stood there for a long moment, the room quiet except for our breathing, the stars blinking gently outside the window, and her heart beating just inches from mine. Then, she reached for my hand, held it. No words, just truth, just presence. But as fate would have it, the moment was shattered by the blaring ring of my phone. I frowned, confused. Only a handful of people had this number now. and all of them knew not to call at this hour. I answered cautiously. The voice on the other end was urgent. Unfamiliar. Mr. Cole? You need to come back to New York immediately. There's been a breach in your company's cybersecurity. Sensitive data is being leaked. Your name is already in the headlines. My chest tightened. I could feel the old world. The chaos. The greed. The storm I had once escaped, pulling me back. I looked at Grace. And for the first time, I did not know what choice to make. I stood in that room, phone pressed to my ear, the past tugging violently at my sleeve, while the future stood quietly beside me, holding my hand. The voice on the line kept talking. Your reputation is at risk, Mr. Cole. This breach could ruin everything you've built. But as I looked into Grace's eyes, something shifted inside me. Everything I had built was standing right in front of me. A child sleeping peacefully. A woman who had turned my house into a home. Children outside dreaming again because she had believed in them. That was everything I had built. I spoke calmly into the phone. Handle it, I said. I trained a team of the best minds for a reason. If the company was built on truth and value, it will stand. If it crumbles, maybe it was never worth saving. I hung up. And just like that, I was free. Grace stepped forward, brushed her fingers across my sleeve. You did not have to do that, she said. I did, I replied. Because I do not want to return to a world that never valued what truly matters. She leaned her head against my chest. I'm proud of you. No one had said that to me in years. Not after awards. Not after IPOs. Not after headlines. Only now. When I had chosen people over profit. When I had chosen love over legacy. Days passed. Then weeks. The data breach made noise. But not as much as expected. And in time, my company adapted. It survived. But more importantly, so did I. We rebuilt the shelter. We opened Grace Academy the following spring. Noah cut the ribbon with tiny hands. Grace gave the first lesson beneath a tree, teaching children how roots grow strong before flowers ever bloom. We married in a small chapel. No press. No spectacle. Just us. Our son. Dozens of children whose laughter had become our music. And a handful of people who knew the truth of our story. They said it was unorthodox. That a billionaire marrying his former maid was a scandal waiting to happen. Let them talk. They had no idea that she was never just a maid. She was a miracle. She had nursed my son back to health. And nursed my soul back to life. She gave me more than love. She gave me purpose. Moral of the story. We often chase wealth, success, and power, believing they will fill the emptiness within. But life has a way of placing angels in the most unexpected roles. Sometimes, the person you least expect will teach you the most profound truths. Love does not look at bank balances or backgrounds. It looks at sacrifice. It listens to silence. It grows in the soil of kindness. And if you are wise enough to see it, it transforms everything. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and let someone know. You are never alone.